So Jamie, voluntary disclosures, I mean, it's voluntary. So what do you volunteer to tell? What don't you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really important part of our overall industry. The voluntary disclosure or prior disclosure, depending on the jurisdiction in the industry, has become a really great mechanism for being able to avoid potential penalties, to mitigate any penalties that might be coming your way. As we've discussed in previous trade buzzes, you do have the option for post-summary corrections to correct your entries. You've got the option for, corrections of your EEI filings. You've got options for protests if you're past the liquidation date. But then there's scenarios where there's a larger problem that needs to be addressed. And it may be a huge systematic issue impacting a ton of your transactions. A prior disclosure becomes a great way of being able to address that situation. And it is generally voluntary. You don't have to do it. There are situations like if you are part of the CTPAT compliance or the ISA program formerly, there was a mandated requirement that you had to submit these disclosures. So they are definitely helpful. I would definitely work with your internal and potentially external counsel before doing one to make sure that you're making the right choice for your company, and secondarily, that you've made sure that everything is covered within that disclosure so that you don't expose yourself to additional risk.
What kind of things can affect these disclosure outcomes?
The outcome can be really significant. One of them can be the timing, right? When do you do this? You definitely want to do it as soon as you know there's a problem, but you want to be prepared, right? You want to have done your research. You don't want to just say, hey, we have a problem, and then not be able to address it. You definitely need to do it in the right timing. You also want to do it before an investigation is open. So you can't really do a voluntary disclosure after you've already been
caught.
Right. So and I apologize for you very strict legal folks out there. There is a difference between prior disclosure and voluntary disclosure. I'm just going to refer to disclosure in general because it covers both the import and the export side. But that timing becomes really important because once the investigation's opened, the disclosure window has closed.
That's right.
So you want to meet that timeline. You do also want to make sure that you have covered all your bases, that you've gone into the core problem. Not just here's the high-level issues. We had this error on our entries, or this, we did something wrong on an export. You want to have gone through and looked, is there a systematic reason that this was caused? Address that core solution and core problem to fix that, because that will be part of your disclosure that you make to the government agency. Is not just, hey, here's the problem, but it's, this is what we've reviewed. This is what we've seen as the problem. These are the things that we put in place to make sure that this doesn't happen. That's a complete disclosure.
Okay.
Without that component, you're just exposing yourself to more risk because now you've just highlighted, we have a problem.
Yeah.
If you don't give the solution, they're going to think, oh, well, you still have the problem. That's almost an invitation for an investigation.
And if you did the solution too, it's obviously you're showing that you're trying to make things right, correct?
Absolutely. And doing one, again, a lot of companies are reticent to do one because they think, oh, if I do a disclosure, that's going to expose me to risk because now the government's going to see all my ugly things hidden in the closet. And so, yes, there is risk with doing one, but the risk of not doing one is also kind of great because if you've never done a disclosure, then the government's kind of like, well, we know you have problems.
Yeah, nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. Right, so if you haven't done a disclosure, then how are you addressing those problems that you found? Or are you even doing the due diligence and reasonable care to do your audits, to find those problems, to report to the government on, right? So there is a double-edged sword there, but I would always err on the side of do your review, do the disclosure, work with an attorney to make sure that it's done correctly, or a consulting firm, whoever you're going to, get you to support that activity, and make sure that you've audited everything very, very thoroughly. Global distributor that I know found huge errors in their tariffs. Huge errors that were there. And they went through the process of, they engaged, us as a consulting firm, that I was at previously. Well, they engaged with us. We went through, we audited everything down to soup to nuts, the whole kitchen sink. We reviewed their entire process. And then from that, updated their policies, procedures, their activities to make sure that they were sure up. And in the document we submitted, here's the errors, was the problem, here's the systematic issue, this is how we're going to fix it. And we were present to present that information to the authorities.
Sure, that was helpful too.
It was extremely helpful because at the end of the day, walked away with minimal to no penalty, and really all they owed was some of the interest and duties that they had not paid on. They owed that amount. That doesn't go away. But the fines and penalties weren't present because they had shown the government, they had proved that they had done what they needed to do through this disclosure.